told you I'm still here, guys. I didn't leave y'all. I'm here. Stephen Billings here. Of course, also with me is Andrew Cabral, back for another Unwatched Pile, the show where we dust it off. We dust off them Blu-rays that have just been sitting there just too long and finally watch one. Come on here and talk about it. Then we go back into our collections to say, hey, what looks good with that new movie I just watched? We double feature it up. We talk about it. Andrew, you ready for this?
I am indeed. Yeah, everybody was bemoaning the loss of one Stephen Billings,
No,
and
everybody's
he's
fine.
right. He's right here. Yeah, he's right here.
It's fine. They're okay.
Yeah.
Let me say this right now. Andrew did a wonderful job on his first solo episode.
Thank you.
Everybody out there, please give him a hand. Did a great job
on the back.
Yeah,
doing that. Yeah, it's a much different experience than one would think. Specifically, if you've done it with someone else for so long, you don't know how it's gonna go.
Yeah.
Talking with someone versus talking to no one essentially is a lot different. But I'll get used to it, get down the rhythm. There will be a new episode coming up this coming Monday.
Great show last week.
So we will be diving into a bunch of stuff. Criterion just announced some stuff, and I'm sure we're gonna get some more things beforehand. This month is going by super fast. But we do have another unwatched pile right now, and it's going to be interesting. We all chose movies from the 60s. Unplanned.
Did not plan that. Yeah, but and I noticed that myself, and I was like, yeah, this is gonna be cool because we got like one French film, we got one like first director debut, and then we got one Japanese film, and of course the one that chose the Japanese film is our guest this week. He is returning. He was a guest on Chasing Labels back in the day. He's always been a great supporter of ours. I love, as I said when he first came on, I love following his reviews. He's always watching stuff. He's always writing about stuff. That is Johnny Pomatto. How you doing, man?
I'm fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm happy to be here. I've had a very tall stack of unwatched discs for quite a while now. And every night I think, ooh, should I watch one? I was like, no, I'll wait until Stephen and Andrew call me up to the show. And,
Good choice.
Yeah. Now I'm here to play.
See, Andrew doesn't even listen to that because sometimes I'll see he's like, I'm going to finally watch this movie. I'm like, God damn it, Andrew. Don't watch that movie.
I know.
Wait for a show.
I always feel so guilty, yet I always battle with this idea is like, should I watch something new to progress my watch history, my personal watch history, or should I save it for this? But then I'm like, I'll always have something unwatched. You know what I mean? Like that's always gonna be.
Just go on the Criterion channel or something. Find something there that you haven't watched.
I know.
Don't take a disc off the list. We need it for the show, man.
Very true. I just got a bunch of unwatched stuff from the Kino sales that happened. So it's all stuff that were like blind buys. So those will be in future episodes probably.
Awesome. I need you to be able to keep that because I know you have a lot less unwatched movies in your collection than I do. I have tons of them. So
yeah, probably the balance is more watched than unwatched.
Yeah,
I would definitely say. The problem is also I always end up buying things I've already seen because I don't have them, or they're upgrades from editions I have, or whatever the case may be. So there's always a balance.
But Johnny, how about you? What's your balance of watched and unwatched?
Well, this all sounds very familiar. Yeah, I too am constantly buying favorites and things that I love. And then those Kino Lorber sales are pretty dangerous stuff where it's like, well, The Marrying Man is only $4. It's like, don't I need every Alec Baldwin movie I can get my hands on? The answer is no, but it's on the shelf nonetheless.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I'm like, do I need every Fu Manchu movie? No, but I got the set, and then they keep coming out with some single editions of other actors that played the character. I'm like, God damn it! I'll just get all the Fu Manchu.
I think we all have strategy when it comes to blind buying. I would say, my thing is like I always look at director first, then I look at actor and actress, and it's like, do they look familiar? Do I want their stuff? Is it part of my overall collecting idea? All that kind of stuff. That's how I end up, buying a bunch of things that I'll probably end up watching once and then putting it in the section in my collection just to have. But this week, like I said, we all have movies from the 60s. They all range in terms of where the movies are from, who they're by, and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very different.
Yeah. But before we get into it, just a little bit. Tell us if people that have not seen you on Chasing Labels, and this is their first time meeting you, Johnny. Tell them a little bit about yourself and what you're into and what you do, and yeah, all the good
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, I live in New York City, and I'm a former actor slash media person. I don't know. I've dabbled in a lot of things and kind of left a lot of that behind. I don't tread the boards and go on the auditions like I used to, but I do continue my writing, even though I do it mostly casually and as a hobby now. But I am also the co-host of a podcast, the Authorized podcast, in which we read and discuss film novelizations from, you know, I mean, there's a lot of them. The whole industry has fallen out of fashion. They don't do it so much anymore. But we keep going on eBay and finding those little nuggets tucked away, and spend too much money on pretty bad books often.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't need shelf space, to compete with the U.S. Marshals novelization, but I own it.
Mm,
And lately we've been doing a whole series. I think it's currently airing on all the Planet of the Apes stuff.
nice.
And there were a lot of those, a lot more than I would have guessed when I agreed to do it. You have the original 5 films, and then you've got like the Tim Burton movie, and then some of the Matt Reeves ones, and then each of those has like prequels and sequels that are like bridging the films and telling you what happens in between. I think the Tim Burton movie has like 6 books like within its universe.
Wow.
So I'm a little aped out right now. So
Yeah. Yeah. Did you go see the new movie?
I did. Yes, it was part of my duty to continue with my ape studies, I'm in the minority, I think, but I was a little disappointed. I thought that I really liked the first half. Really,
I don't think you're in the minority.
No?
Most people
Okay.
that I've talked to that have seen it have not liked it.
Okay,
Really?
that's good to
So
know.
yeah. Even my parents did not like it.
Yeah,
And they're very like average, like they don't watch a lot of different things other than mainstream things. So
yeah. I won't get into like spoilery details or
Right.
anything, but I just when I heard that it was like jumping forward in time like 300 years, I was thinking like, yes, okay, great. We did a trilogy about sort of war with humans, and I'm looking forward to seeing ape society progress and getting to that Dr. Zaius era. I mean, maybe not that exact era, but I want them to start living in houses and wearing clothes and doing all that. And then I felt by the end of the film, it's like I feel like we're moving backwards and we're just kind of going back to old dynamics. Maybe not. Maybe the next one will prove me wrong, but it was okay. I was just kind of let down by the back half.
Okay. All right.
Steven, do you want to take a look at the comments before we go forward?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
So yeah, we had some people pop in here. Crazy about them apes. Tony Meachus is in the chat. Hey, gentlemen, and hello to the lovely people in the chat. And of course, as always, Josephine pops in to give us a bunch of stuff. How you doing? Nice to meet you, Johnny.
Nice to meet you, Josephine.
And we got some first-time watchers. She wants to know if you've seen any of these and what you think about any of them. We have Mumsy's Nanny, Sonny, and Girly from 1970.
Never, but I sure love that title.
Yeah. Born in Flames, The Mexican, Miracle Mile, Beautiful People, Quiet City. Any of these?
The Mexican and Miracle Mile I have seen. Beautiful People, that's like a title so generic that like maybe I've seen it, but I need more information on that one. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like there's lots of movies called Beautiful People, so I'm thinking back to 99. I don't know. Maybe I've seen that.
Yeah.
And Regrouping, that sounds familiar. I might be confusing it with something else. Is that vaguely apocalyptic with oh no. Oh, I'm kind of blanking now.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar. I know I've seen The Mexican and Miracle Mile as well. Andrew, anything on any of these?
Miracle Mile, definitely. Miracle Mile is, I think, film, cinephile favorite, I think. Yeah. I mean, for years now, for as long as we've been doing this podcast, and even beforehand, there's been rumors of them putting out a new remastered edition of that movie, and it's been just in the rumor mill for years. Like, there's been a little bit of updates here and there from it, but it's been a long time coming. For, I don't know, by this point, you might as well put out a 4K of it because it's been rumored for so long.
Did Kino not announce a 4K of it?
I
You
thought they
may be
announced it.
right. It might just be in the rumor,
They announced
stage.
something like that like a few years ago. Like since we've been doing the podcast, like at least 2 or 3 years, and it's just kind of hasn't come out yet. And I think they're still working on the remaster. It's kind of been like The Hitcher, which we're supposed to be getting this soon. A Hitcher from Second Sight, another one that's been rumored and updated over time, and we're just kind of waiting around for it. But Miracle Mile is a great talk about apocalyptic film.
Yeah.
Very apocalyptic, entirely apocalyptic, but also a love story as well. Very interesting film. Highly recommend people to see if they haven't already. But yeah, I actually have never seen The Mexican with Brad Pitt. Never seen it.
It was sort of maligned when it came out. People didn't like it because all the marketing was like Brad and Julia together, and then you find out like they're off or they're separated for the majority of the film. But I remember the real breakaway with it was like James Gandolfini's first movie role after The Sopranos. So suddenly people knew how to use him. They were showcasing him, and he's really good in it. I remember it being kind of a fun movie. It's Gore Verbinski, pre-Ring, pre-Pirates. There's a big cameo like at the end, like a big, classic A-lister we all love, comes out of nowhere. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember it being fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is the chats right now. And so let's get into this thing. So as always, we start with our guest. Tell us about Branded to Kill. That is your first time watch.
It is. I'm somewhat embarrassed to admit that, in the tradition of Unwatched Piles, I've been collecting Criterion collections since around 99, I think is when I got my first, I got that 3-disc Brazil box. It's like, my life has changed forever. And little did I know, I was very, very correct there. And I think Branded to Kill is spine 18, I want to say. Oh, maybe it's still, 38. So it was an early one. And I got that DVD and never watched it. And that was back in the day when I was watching every Criterion disc I got a hold of. I just, it was a film education for me. I had never seen much Kurosawa or Ozu or, Fellini and Bergman for that matter. So I just blasted through all of those, and I have no idea why I hadn't seen this film. But I was inspired to finally, because I did just upgrade to the 4K, having never watched any of my previous incarnations. I don't think if there was a Blu-ray, I skipped it. So it's like, this isn't one of those ones that I bought 3 times before watching it. But in New York at the Paris Theater, they've been doing a series on Hitman movies in preparation for the Richard Linklater Hitman movie coming out. And I saw that was on the list, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to go see it. I'm going to pop in my disc, and it's going to look great as this new 4K transfer, and I will finally get the gist of this Hitman movie. And I guess I went in with preconceived notions of knowing that, this is about a hitman who sort of botches a job, and then he is hunted down like he is one of his victims. And I thought, well, isn't that most Hitman movies? They all kind of have that plot. And after the killer,
Fincher.
Yeah, the Fincher movie from last year, which I was not super hot on. I was like, gosh, I feel like I just saw that movie. Am I going to be up for this as well? Is it just going to feel like the same thing? And I'm here to tell you, no, it is not. This is really fantastically, wonderfully weird and surreal, and just has all of these elements that I never would have expected. It's bizarrely sexy and sexual. There's, our lead hitman, he has this trope that he is enamored with the smell of boiling rice, and he is constantly going up to rice cookers and just wafting it up his way, and this arouses him. It's, you have to read between the lines a bit, but there's often a sex scene immediately after he sniffed the rice. And then, the film just gets very strange. I kept thinking, this feels like a dream. This feels like hell a bit. I wondered at times, it's like, is he already dead? Because you would see characters seemingly die either off camera. Actually, one of them seems to be killed on camera at one point, and then she comes back later. And I'm thinking, are these ghosts? Are these like it almost feels like he is dead and he is still being like just tormented again and again and again. It's in his head, or his fellow hitmen who are hunting him down are kind of playing with him. He's gotten too cocky. He's like, I want to be the number one hitman. And they say, well, we're going to teach you a lesson then about how you are not number one. And yeah, there's just so many wonderful devices used with this negative photography of the city of, I think it's mostly Tokyo. I think at one point, Robin thought that they were in Osaka, but my wife Robin, we were in Japan a few years ago, so we watch a lot of Japanese cinema now. Some weird sort of cool animation that gets thrown in, these butterfly drawings that are everywhere, butterflies plastered on the wall. And yeah, it's just a wild film, and not at all what I was expecting. I shouldn't have been so concerned about the subject matter repeating itself from stuff that I've already seen. Have either of you seen it?
It's been a minute. It was a early Criterion that I had bought, and at the time, I'd also bought the other Suzuki films, the couple sets that Arrow put out, from the early Senjei Suzuki, and so I was really into them at the time, and that was one that I definitely watched. I think because I was one of the founding subscribers of Criterion Channel, so I was watching everything. Yeah, I got it.
It was actually just like the anniversary of the Criterion Channel a couple of months ago.
Yeah,
people were posting about it, but yeah, Branded to Kill was another early Criterion Blu-ray for me as well. I probably bought it. Oh goodness, probably around when it came out. It was that, and it was Tokyo Drifter was the other Suzuki film. And I would so 2011 was when the Blu-ray came out. So I probably bought it 2012, probably right, at that Barnes and Noble sale the following July. So that's probably when I watched it, was 2012. It's been a while, but I remember the stylization of it. I remember the rice sniffing. I remember
I was gonna say, when you brought up the rice sniffing, I was like, I remember that. Yeah.
Yes, I remember
weird
that
thing.
I mean, everyone's got their thing, but his happens to be that.
Yeah, mine's pizza.
I guess so. Well, it's kind of, I remember watching the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle films when I was a little kid, and they would sniff the pizza, a moment of like reflecting, just taking it all in, the delicacy of New York pizza, and just
I was gonna say, Johnny's in New York, he knows all about pizza.
Yeah, and it's like,
well, and as a New Yorker, I really judge the Turtles harshly for ordering Domino's in Manhattan. I'm sorry, but rough. No real New Yorker orders Domino's. But...
Very true.
They were aware of their sponsorship that they needed to make the movie, so yeah. And then when they did the live action Michael Bay produced ones, it was Pizza Hut was the sponsor for that.
I remember
and it's
that.
Like, we're just picking the most corporate pizza chains we can possibly find.
I mean, or if you want to look at it this way, they live on the streets, so they don't have a lot of money, so they have to go to the...
I guess. Yeah. Or maybe I mean, how do you get as it is, just getting the pizza delivered to a sewer grate? It was tough enough.
And pizza will smell all the better when you live in a sewer. Like, you really enjoy that.
Yeah. They're probably used to it. But back to Branded to Kill, I remember when I bought that and Tokyo Drifter at the same time. I think I probably watched them back to back. And actually, the Seijun Suzuki early films volume sets are probably two of my biggest collecting regrets, is not getting them when they came out, because they've been out of print forever, and they go for just an exorbitant amount of money.
I'll sell them to you for
on the third market sale,
$2,000.
Oh, that's some good price right there. That's a deal. That's a deal. Clearly.
I got you, man.
There's that, and then of course there's my biggest bane of my existence. Was the giant set that you have, Stephen? I completely
talking about the big
Gamera, the giant Gamera set. Yeah. That's another big.
I'll sell you that one too.
I got that one as well, and
yeah,
I after really blasting through a few of those during lockdown with my niece who loved Gamera. I think she's grown out of him, and I don't know how many more Gamera movies I'm going to see in my life. But
it's I know. It's Godzilla as a turtle. That's kind of how you sell Gamera as to people. It's kind of that similar premise. So when you got Gamera, King Kong, and everybody else, and I've always liked those giant kaiju films pretty much. I've grown to love them over the years for their their absurd cheesiness of their time. I mean, I went through the whole Showa era Criterion set, and once you get to like, Baby Godzilla, things kind of, oh, Godzilla's son, things get a little wonky, a little wonky.
That they
um,
do, yeah. I do love all those, like, kaiju movies too. I just find that I usually can't watch too many of them in a row. Like, I need to space
mm,
them out. I need to be in that mood, and, even better on a big screen, typically, than
yeah,
in your living
that
room.
that's the spectacle of it all. I mean, even with Godzilla minus one, the reason why I did so well in the theater here and just internationally is because of the spectacle of Godzilla on the big screen. Even the American movie that just came out, did well. People went to see that in droves. People seem to really still gravitate towards those giant monster movies, and that's all from Toho, all from Japan, all from that Japanese cinema era. But yeah, Seijun Suzuki is always a director I've wanted to get more of his stuff from. And there've been like there's the 2 volume sets from Arrow, the Tayoshi set is also from Arrow, plus these two from Criterion. Plenty of his stuff to go around. He's a director I don't think a lot of people are too aware of. He just passed away, I think, a few years ago. He lived to
Mhm.
be nearly 100 because I remember him um, doing like interviews. Like,
Yeah, he's interviewed on in 2011 for the Blu-ray, and
yeah,
that's on this new 4K, or they just ported all the extras. And the interviews are fascinating. He was basically blackballed from the studio after this movie because the head of the studio didn't like it and didn't understand it. And he said, "Well, I make movies that no one understands. That's the point." And yeah, he was fired and he was sued for breach of contract, and he won that case because they couldn't prove that he did something he wasn't supposed to. They just didn't like the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it put him out of commission, I think, for like 10 years until he started directing commercials and they got attention. And yeah, so I haven't seen many of his like later films. But yeah, I this really inspires me to dip in. I too often when I was watching like Japanese cinema when I was younger, I was hitting the big guns, your Kurosawas, your Ozus, and then I go into anime, and now I have a pretty wide palette for it. Like I said, we've been to Japan. My wife does karate. She's very into the culture in general, and so yeah, we are constantly expanding our horizons there. But
yeah,
uh, there's
I
always
totally
more to
agree.
find.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Japanese just entertainment and um, culture in general, I think, is rather international now. I could just say, just from being an anime fan, anime is bigger now than I think it's ever been before. Manga sells better than American comics do now across the world. It's
Yeah.
it's it's massive now. Um, but yeah, it's very very fascinating. Steven?
Awesome, awesome. So that did, Branded to Kill, definitely it's a kind of a that's a seminal criterion. I feel like that's one of the founding members. It's
Yeah,
one
for
that you
sure.
should definitely check out if you're getting into Japanese cinema. If you like that, something that's from the '60s, stylish. It's a good period of Japanese cinema to check out. So, but all right, Andrew, please
Mm,
tell us about your first time watch La Piscine. La
yeah,
Piscine.
La Piscine, or the American translation is the swimming pool. And this is a film that came out in 1969 by Jacques Deray. We seem to have a lot of Jacques directors out there. There's Jacques Tati, there's Jacques Demy, and we have Jacques Deray. And this film stars Alain Delon as well as Rami Schneider. And apparently, this film was a rather large hit when it came out back in 1969 because it reunited the former real life couple of Alain Delon and Rami Schneider. And of course, they're two very beautiful people in the film. As you can see right in front, the film doesn't hide away from the fact that two gorgeous people in a sexual, romantic, uh, interpersonal embrace. What is interesting is that this image here is literally the first scene in the movie. Like they just went and put that on the screen here.
No spoilers, guys.
No spoilers, but
Right in the
it's kind of
beginning.
showing you right here. Um, and the film, of course, I at least for years for me has had that reputation as being a rather sexual film, being a film that you know pushes the envelopes in that regard. But obviously, from a modern context, from a modern perspective, it's rather tame in that approach. But in typical European fashion, nudity is not something they hide away from. You know what I mean? Specifically, casual nudity. You know what I mean? Nothing too risque or nothing too over the top. It's not exploitative in any way, you know what I mean? Not something like that. But they do emphasize that in this film, specifically early on. But then you get into the plot of the film. So the plot of this film is kind of as thus: you have these two, uh, kind of you could say happily together couple who are vacationing in the French Riviera at this wonderful, like kind of mansion with this gorgeous pool, beautiful blue colors. Everything's nice and beautiful, beautiful people, beautiful place. And then two people come to stay with them. It's their mutual friend Henry and his daughter. And then what that introduces into this element is a lot of issues, a lot of kind of problems, kind of upsetting the homeostasis of it all, as you would. And what we come to learn as viewers is that the Henry character and the Rami Schneider character have a previous relationship before she had met Elaine Delon and before they had gotten together and are in this romantic entanglement. And so that brings up a lot of insecurities within the Elaine Delon character. He starts asking her about the relationship kind of over and over again. She's rather cagey about it. She doesn't really talk about it. She kind of teases him about it. He teases her about it. And what starts off as kind of this teasing back and forth kind of grows into more antagonistic vibes. You know what I mean? Kind of grows into more, the insecurities take over. When it comes to, I think, relationships in general like that, we see that a lot in real life. People's insecurities get the better of them. They start overthinking. They start thinking of outlandish scenarios. They start thinking of all kinds of things. And it ends up being their downfall, it ends up being their kind of undoing of themselves. They kind of destroy themselves being inside their own head. That's kind of a big thing in this film. And the film progresses along those lines until it reaches a fever pitch, until it reaches certain things end up happening. Also, the temptation of the young daughter in this film for Elaine Delon's character is there as well. She's incredibly young and impressionable, and they start up kind of a relationship back and forth. A little, inappropriate from a modern lens, and probably inappropriate for a lens back then as well. A much older man taking advantage of a much younger woman. Although we've seen that in other films and stuff, it's been more predatory in other films, but still gives off that modern vibe of creepiness in this film. But it also adds more animosity, adds more things into this plot that shake things up with these people.
This is the Jane Birkin character?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Jane
Okay.
Birkin, yes. And she's interviewed on here as well. There are a few interesting extra features on here. There is they did an English language version of this film as well that they shot alongside the French version of the film, because all the actors spoke English as well. So they just decided to kind of make an English version as well as a French version. And I believe Jacques Deray changed things up a little bit. I believe he changed the ending as well, because the ending of the film is, I don't want to spoil it, ambiguous. That's all I'll say. A lot of things are happening in this film underneath the surface of it all that you really have to unpack. And I feel like the film kind of follows that all the way to the end. But yeah, someone just mentioned that there is a movie called The Swimming Pool that was done in, I think, 2003 with
The Francois Ozon
is it
film
Isabelle
with
Huppert? I always get
no, it's
Charlotte
Charlotte
Rampling.
Rampling.
I always
and
get those two
yeah.
actresses confused. And that film is very similar to this in the sense of the setting, in the sense of this interplay with human relationships and how that can escalate and kind of push envelopes. I don't know if it's a direct remake, though. I couldn't find any evidence on that. I looked on IMDb's trivia. I looked on the Wikipedia page. I couldn't see. All I know is that it's very similar in tone.
Yeah,
So
I
if
don't
you've
think
seen
it's
that
an
film,
exact remake. I have seen that film, and that is, similarly like has Hitchcockian elements and whatnot, but it's just kind of mostly a two-hander with the two women, and but yeah, definitely influenced by it. I
Most
actually,
definitely.
yeah, and this is fascinating to hear about the two versions because I watched the trailer for this when I heard that you were doing it for the show tonight. I was kind of flabbergasted I'd never seen it because it checks so many boxes for me.
Mm.
But the trailer was in English, and my first thought was like, "Oh, it's dubbed," but then I'm like, "Well, but that is Alain Delon's voice," and it looks dubbed, but it also kind of looks like it's matching their lips. And I was,
I always
thought
wonder those
surely
things
this
as well.
must be in French. Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
so,
amazing that it changes and deviates so
yeah,
wildly from each other.
it does deviate, and I think on here as well, there's also an alternate ending of the
Mm,
Spanish language version as well. Um, yeah, so it's interesting the way in which this film plays with characters, plays with um interrelationships when it comes to love and infidelity and those things, and how fragile all of that can be. You know what I mean? I've always said this, that relationships are a very interesting thing. Human relationships, just from observing people whom I know, and just the world in general. It's very complicated, very complex, and movies do obviously movies do exaggerate these things, but they kind of do hit some truths from time to time. You know what I mean? They
mhm.
very much hit on certain universal truths, and I think this film, all the way back in 1969, is hitting on a lot of universal truths. So it's a really good film. I did want to mention a couple more features. There is a 50 years later, like the kind of short, about 27-minute documentary esque that was done in 2019. I believe it's done by Jacques Dere's daughter. It features interviews with Alain Delon, Jane Birkin, screenwriter Jean-Claude Cartier, who did a bunch of well-known French films of the time. Like, I believe he was one of the writers for Belle de Jour, so I think he worked with Louis Buñuel. Um, yeah, it was produced by Agnes Vincent Dore, who was the widow of director Jacques Dore. That's what I meant to say. Um, yeah, and there's like I said, the English language version, and then there's a new interview on here as well, and then there's just archival footage with Alain Delon, like behind the scenes type of stuff of kind of like news footage of like Rami Schneider and Alain Delon like traveling to set and stuff like that, and
Mm.
shooting on location where they shot the movie, things like that are on here as well. But this was a relatively new. I think this was a new release that came out from Criterion in 2021. So it's a 1088 in the collection. So it's well past the thousand movie mark. And it's kind of nice to see a brand new film that hadn't been in the collection before, because we do get a lot of upgrades these days.
Yeah, I'm surprised I missed it. When I saw the title, it's like, well, this is Criterion, right? And I went to my shelf because every once in a while I have to check my shelf to make sure that I do or do not have it. It's like, oh no, not here. And I didn't realize it was so new. I'm not sure how it slipped past me, but I will make a note for the upcoming sale, which
Yeah,
seems
that's where
imminent.
I bought it from. I bought
Yeah.
it from the same. And I think I bought it on kind of like my strategy is like by the third time I go to the sale, it's just that's the part where I just start picking things randomly.
Yeah.
Like I just start like, okay, I've got all the stuff I wanted to get from the last sale. Now I want to like fill out portions of my collection that look interesting. So it's like I've heard of La Piscine. I love Alain Delon. Um, yeah, I talked about him on the most recent episode of Chasing Labels as well, because he was in a spaghetti western with Charles Bronson called Red Dust.
Mm,
Um, and no, Red Sun. It was called Red Sun.
that's
So
it.
he
Yeah.
did it all back then. He did it all.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, them French people just know how to sex it up, don't they?
Yeah.
They
They look
do.
good in bathing suits. I tell you
They
that.
do. There's a lot of scenes in here with Alain Delon just wearing a towel, specifically early on, because
Of
he's just
course.
hanging out by the pool
Why
in the
not?
French Riviera. What are you gonna
Why
do?
not?
You know?
Fantastic. All right. So I'm gonna move over to mine. I'm gonna slock it up a little bit. I'm gonna
Nice.
Yeah.
slock it up.
Do it. Do
Well,
it.
I'm gonna get it all nice and gross in here. And never mind. You just talked about a gross, sexy, gross movie. I'm gonna make it I guess you could say Hitchcockian slock. But we're going with Francis Ford Coppola's first film, or as it used to be called back then, just Francis Coppola. Boring. Dementia 13. And I didn't plan this. This is our 13th episode. Did
Oh.
not plan this. Actually, what I was going for here was that I wanted to do this film because Roger Corman is a producer. And of course, we just lost him. And so I figured, hey, cool movie I haven't watched, that, can pay tribute to a very important figure in film history. So before we get into this, anybody got anything to say about Roger Corman?
Oh,
Johnny.
I mean, yeah, there's so much to say. I mean, he truly was one of the godfathers of independent cinema, and he made a lot of schlock that's like borderline unwatchable. But he also made some great films, some really fun ones, and some insightful ones. You know, The Intruder is a great film. He considered that his greatest film, and it's the only one to ever lose money. He said, because it was a serious drama, but it gave us William Shatner, an early role for him. I don't think that there is you can overstate the importance of who he gave us as he was a mentor and to these acolytes who went on to create modern Hollywood. You have your Jack Nicholsons, your Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, Ron Howard, well, Francis Ford Coppola, so you said, Joe Dante, Martin Scorsese. It's like they all sort of came up under his tutelage. Everyone had to make that first film for Francis Ford Coppola. You were, Peter Bogdanovich, another one. You sort of slummed it with The Terror or something, but then that if you made that one and you made him some money, then you got to make the one that you wanted to make. There it is. So
yeah. And I was gonna say, speaking of getting your start, so with Francis Ford Coppola with this film, this was made for chump change because he was in the midst of making a film called The Young Racers. Corman was. And so he, at the time, Coppola was his sound guy. And so he was like, you want to make a movie? Like, here's the little bit of left. We came in under budget. Here, take this money and go make whatever movie you want to make. And then he added $20,000 on top of that he raised. And so he made this movie for like $42,000 to 13. So this movie, this is a Vestron release. I got this and I've kind of always been wanting to watch it because it is Coppola, and it just sat there for a couple years, and I'm like, this is the chance. And so this movie is it's one of them things where I don't want to get too into the plot because it's, kind of shifts a lot. But essentially, the movie starts off with a woman and a man getting into a boat. You got Louise, who is just married Johnny, who is part of this like very rich family, and part of what we learn in this first scene is that Louise obviously wants this inheritance money that would come with being part of this family, but if he dies before things are settled, then she won't get anything. And so in this first scene, not a spoiler, he dies. He has a heart attack, and instead of like doing this honestly, she decides, I can't let anybody find out about him dying, so she throws him in the pond and covers it up. And then from then, it starts out. This is very intriguing beginning, and then as the movie goes on, it totally shifts into a whole other movie. It turns into like a who mystery about who is this axe murderer that's killing people. It's like two different movies. It's like, who's the director I'm thinking of? It's like a not Al Adamson, but an Andy Milligan movie. Like some of the Andy Milligan movies is like started out as one movie and then it would be a whole other movie, and it's like it's kind of like that. It starts off, and honestly, first half had me in. I was like, okay, this woman's trying to cover up this murder. Now she's got to like go to the family's estate and pretend that Johnny, her husband's, he's in New York. He's doing business. He'll be back, but instead it kind of shifts gears and takes her at. I mean, I don't want to spoil the movie. Shifts away from her. So, I don't know how I feel about this yet. I'm still going through this in my mind. Definitely um, inspired. I'm guessing Psycho very much was behind this movie. Psycho had come out a few years earlier, and I think this was Corman saying, "Hey, try to do something very Psycho inspired," and it has definite homages in there. Stylistically, I think for a first movie, it definitely has some good imagery there, good images, and some cool stuff that just comes out of nowhere, like little toys that look like the toy that Sid made in Toy Story, just popping out of nowhere. That's a scene. That's in the scene. It. Anybody else seen this crazy movie?
I have.
Johnny, please explain this to me more, because after one watch, I don't know what's going on.
I can't do that because the plot famously kind of doesn't make sense. And I think you're right that Coppola was maybe making some movie, and then maybe one day Roger showed up to set and handed him an axe and said, "You have an axe murderer in your movie now." And it's like, "Oh, okay, I'll try to make this work." Yeah. I actually saw this on the big screen maybe 6 or 7 years ago with Corman in attendance.
Wow.
He was showing that and The Intruder that night, and I got to meet him because my friend was dating his daughter, which was pretty cool. And I'm still a little upset that he didn't marry her, because I wanted to be, I wanted to be at a table with Uncle Jack and, trade, do rails with, well, Dennis Hopper was long gone. I don't know. But, I wanted to get in that family somehow.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Dementia 13, I think, I love to go back to some great director's roots and say, let me find some of the nuggets that led to the greatness that was still to come. I don't know if there's a lot of that in Dementia 13, but it does make it more fun to think well, this is Coppola doing a slasher, Psycho ripoff. And, I love a good Manor House movie. I love a good inheritance thriller where it's like, oh, family members bumping each other off to get the money. The last time I saw it, I think maybe because of the vibe in the theater and that Roger was there, everyone was having a lot of fun with it. It's also like 73 minutes soaking wet, something like that. You're in and out real quick. So it's a lot of fun if you don't think about it too hard. And you best not, because it really doesn't make any sense from what I remember.
Yeah, it's interesting that, and I think I like that even a director like Coppola has his roots in horror, and I think that you see a lot of directors kind of coming back to that, like you said. I mean, it's always been there, but some of the more famous, I would say more well-known kind of independent directors are all starting out in horror, like your Robert Eggers, or your what's his name, that did Hereditary,
Ari Aster.
Ari Aster, and you're seeing this whole new wave of young directors that start out in horror, and now you're seeing Ari Aster kind of start to shift to some other thing, kinda, but I guess horror's still kind of in there, but I mean, I think it's always cool to see that horror is a foundational kind of genre for a lot of filmmakers, that's where they get their start. I mean, obviously budgetary wise is part of the reason, but I think even when it's not done well, like Dementia 13's, it's not really a great movie. I can't sit here and say recommend it. Be like, dude, you got to watch this movie. Watch it, like you said, more for seeing the beginnings of a really kind of one of our masters of filmmaking, where he started with. And even though I don't consider this a good movie, you can see that all the greatness trying to come out in this movie. I think visually, you could see he had an eye. Some good images, but storytelling wasn't there yet. And it probably was partly because of budget and because of,
And I think you have to put the movie within the context of the time. In the early '60s, Roger Corman produced film,
and
with leftover budget.
And he made up this movie in 2 days or something.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's kind of him just trying things out. You know what I mean? As a lot of directors do with their first couple of movies. But I think if you want to get a more sense of the Coppola we know later and the Coppola we know now, you look at his next couple of movies, like You're a Big Boy Now and The Rain People, which just got Blu-ray releases from Warner Archive. If you see those films, those look like quote unquote Coppola films, Coppola-esque films, more so traditionally than we that we're used to. Yeah, The Rain People was a movie I had only heard of and had never seen before, and really had a completely different idea of what the movie was going to be. And then it ended up being something that I thought that is really, really good. I definitely recommend stuff like that. I mean, there's so much Coppola now in the news because his new
Yeah.
movie Megalopolis just premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. To some of the wildest takes you've ever seen for a movie review. Uh, uh, it's uh, it's gotten everything from standing ovations to this is the worst movie ever made. I've seen comparisons to The Room, and I've seen comparisons to like masterpieces. So I don't know what to think. But that's Cannes for you.
Yeah.
It's extreme when it comes to the reactions from that film festival.
I know I'll be first in line to see it, Stace.
Oh, I
Yeah.
have to see this
I
thing.
don't even care. Like it just, and I'm trying to stay as in the dark as possible. I keep hearing little whispers here and there about things, but I don't know what's going on. I just know that like Coppola put 150 million of his own money into this thing. I'm gonna see it.
Sold
Certainly
a
is.
lot of wine.
Yeah,
Sold a lot of
certainly a
wine
swan
too.
song, I'm sure. But yeah, I can't wait. I'm counting on it being like opening night of the New York Film
Yeah,
Festival this year.
and the trailers tell you absolutely nothing about it.
Hmm.
Like, if for those of you who are afraid to watch trailers for movies, the trailers for Megalopolis tell you absolutely nothing about the movie. It's just completely so wildly absurd. Um, but yeah, Coppola's early work is fascinating, and of course you have that '70s run, which is absolutely legendary. Um, yeah, that interesting one with Dementia 13. I watched it probably like 8 years ago, and don't really remember it too much. All I remember is what I rated it on Letterboxd, which was 3 out of 5. That's all I remember.
Yeah, I would probably. I haven't. I usually wait to do my ratings after the Unwatched Pile, but I would say probably like 2.5.
It's got that you got
You
to
know,
put it in that cult movie-ish
I
vibe. You
know, I
know,
know.
it's a different vibe. Those movies.
I just, I have to rate the movie. If I'm being like completely objective with my ratings, I have to. I don't always. I can't always like just be like, oh, because it's a B movie, I have to just give it its due. 3.5 stars, just because. No, I mean, like if I didn't like the movie, I didn't like the movie.
Mm.
I'm not going to give it slack.
You are
Because
very honest with your opinion.
I'm going to be honest with my review because I want to then go back and watch it again and be like, why did I give it this much? Like, like what
Well,
was I
thing is,
thinking? I
I
was
thought
smoking something that day.
what's crazy is I like for the previous episode that I just did for Chasing Labels, I rewatched George A. Romero's Bruiser because I went and looked at my letterbox and I'm like, wow, I rated this really low. Like I must have not liked this movie at all. And I couldn't quite remember the film until I started watching it, and then it all kind of started coming back to me. And I'm like, I must have just not that I rated it much higher on Letterbox. I know Letterbox is super objective anyways, but just the idea that it's similar to that, where I just had rated something, gone back and seen it, and I maybe had a little bit of a reappraisal or reappreciation of certain elements of it. But yeah, that was just a recent thing that I did.
But yeah, it's an okay movie. It's a interesting debut from Francis Ford Coppola, and um I'm not saying it's not worth watch. I think if you're into Coppola, give it a chance, look at it, see
Yeah.
if you like it. It's
For
definitely
completists, maybe like
Yeah.
I simply must see every Coppola movie. Well,
Yeah,
you have an axe murderer movie that you have to see then.
yeah. All right. Well, back to you, Johnny. This is my favorite part. I want to know what you paired with Branded to Kill.
Well, okay. Like I said, I've got Hitman movies on the brain. So I thought instead of going with something else Japanese, and I cheated a little because I actually didn't watch this at home. I did go to the cinema to see it.
That's okay.
They were projecting a 35 millimeter, but I've been seeing like Hitman movies all week as a result. And some of them like haven't appeared on anything since maybe the DVD era. I'm not sure if like say Gross Point Blank, which I saw last night, has gotten a Blu-ray release at all, or if it has, it was some mass marketed bare bones thing, in 2011 or something. And same with I just watched again the movie I hadn't seen probably since it came out, William H. Macy in Panic, where he's a hitman for Father Donald Sutherland, and he's married to Tracy Ullman, and he falls in love with Neve Campbell, and his therapist is John Ritter. That's a weird one. Not even all that bad, but the one I went with is one that I do own as well, and I hadn't seen this since I was, I don't know, probably maybe in high school even. And I remembered nothing about it except the ending, which is very memorable, has a very shocking image, and that is another hit person film called Prizzi's Honor, the John Huston film, starring Jack Nicholson and Kathleen Turner, and who else? Angelica Houston won an Oscar for a supporting role. Robert Loggia, and William Hickey as the old mob boss, also nominated for an Oscar for it. And it is a strange film. I couldn't believe how little of this I remembered, given that, it wasn't that long ago, and it's an iconic actors and iconic director. I only remember the ending. I didn't even remember the tone of it, which is lightly comedic. I think you would call this a dark comedy, but it's sort of refreshing that Jack, in particular, is sort of playing this dumb mob stooge, but he's not overplaying it. He's not doing his broad comedic persona from The Fortune, where he's like, I'm gonna do Laurel and Hardy here, or he's just kind of playing it cool, playing it sexy, but also you get the sense oh, this guy's not too bright, and it's about him, and he sees Kathleen Turner at a wedding, a mob wedding, and he's just enamored with her. He tracks her down. She actually lives in California. He's in New York, and he pursues her. They fall in love. They marry almost instantly, and he discovers that she is also an assassin for. She's an independent contractor. She was actually at the wedding to pull off a job, or she was in New York to pull off a job during the wedding. That way, all the mob guys had alibis. Everyone saw them at the wedding, and she was there to take someone out. It's a really it is very funny, although it takes its time to get there, and it's not super obvious with the humor. There's a lot of ambiguous lying going on, where some characters are constantly lying to each other, and yet you are not spending any time with them so that you know that they're lying. You are just as confused as to whether they're being genuine or not. And the log line of the film that is on the poster and everything is basically they were, he's a hitman, she's a hit woman, they got married, and then their next assignment was each other, womp womp. Which is, that makes it sound like a silly comedy, like something like Mr. and Mrs. Smith or something. Yeah. But it's not played for laughs. And honestly, that premise doesn't even really come into it until after the 90-minute mark. But it does keep you guessing as to what's going to happen. I knew what was going to happen, but I also didn't know quite how we were going to get there. It doesn't lean into the silliness that it could. It's very restrained. At first, I thought Huston is John Huston, kind of sleepwalking through this as a director. It's very slowly paced. The wedding in the film, it opens with Ave Maria sung in its entirety, and you're like, wow, they're keep going with this. But it kind of gets under your skin, and you get immersed in this mob world that is not as rich and flavored as The Godfather, but it has it's waffling between this feeling of true authenticity, you're yeah, this feels like this world and these people, but also the situation is just barely, just inches away from being farcical. So I really liked it, and one of those that in the first half hour is oh god, I don't know if this is as good as I remember it being, and by the end it totally won me over. Angelica Houston is not in the film as much as I remembered her being, but every scene that she's in, she kills it. She's great. Ends on a really nice note with her. I like it a lot. Have either of you seen it?
It's sitting in my collection. It's one of them. That's a Kino, right?
It is a Kino Lorber, yeah.
Yeah, so one of them big Kino pickups, and as Andrew said, look at the directors. It's John Huston. I was like, I'm grabbing that. Still sitting in there. Haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, I don't have it, and I hate that I don't have it. It's John Huston's second to last film that he directed. Towards the end, very, very end of his life and career. I think he came out in 1985 and he passed away in 1987. And yeah, definitely something to add to the collection if you're a John Huston fan. I've never seen the movie, but I like this kind of idea of Jack Nicholson in the 80s. Jack Nicholson as a hitman sounds fascinating to me, just because he doesn't seem like he would be sly enough or unrecognizable enough to be a hitman. You know what I mean? Because he's so recognizable. He's so unique, and just his mannerisms would draw people to him. At least that's the persona he's given off in a lot of his roles. Again, Kathleen Turner's interesting because I saw someone do a social media post the other day where they're just saying like you don't see a lot of actresses like Kathleen Turner these days, or you don't see Kathleen Turner in a lot of things these days. But she was a really big star in the 80s
Yeah,
in
huge.
these kind of like adventure films and things like that.
Yeah,
Great actress.
Romancing the Stone, one of my favorites, and
Yes,
Body Heat. She just like kind of came out of nowhere with that, and like was an overnight sensation. And yeah, I mean, she was sexy, she was funny, she could do drama and suspense. I mean, she really could do it all. And I do think that she is one of the most egregious cases of Hollywood just finding an
yeah.
actress disposable when she turned 40 or so.
Just
Uh,
moving past them, and we've
yeah,
seen that happen with so many prominent actors and actresses throughout Hollywood's career. They just like they slowly disappear and fade away.
Yeah, I
I
saw
remember.
John Waters' Serial Mom last week on
I'm
the
just
big
gonna
screen
mention
for
Serial Mom.
yeah, for Mother's Day, and I think that's kind of her last great role. She's certainly continued to work, but she's never been used quite as well since, and it's really a shame.
Yeah, and that was 1994 for people keeping track at home. So 30 years ago,
Yeah.
by math sense, it's a long time. It's a long time.
Yeah. All right. So you got a Hitman double feature there. Good stuff. Andrew, please tell us what sexy movie you're gonna put with your
Yeah.
sexy movie.
So there was a few choices I was thinking of. Unfortunately, I didn't have two of the movies that popped into my head. I guess I can say what those movies are. I was thinking of Roman Polanski's Knife in the Water, and I was
Mhm.
also thinking of Dead Calm, and
Okay.
which is kind of a remake of that of Knife in the Water,
Yeah.
to be honest, from the 90s with Billy Zane. Uh, so I didn't have those movies. So I was thinking of movies with love triangles, tough relationships, infidelity, love, and all those things. And I thought of Mike Nichols' film Closer, a
Ooh.
movie no one seems to talk about these days. I know it's a movie that came out in 2004, so it's been a time. It's been about 20 years. But this is a movie that I believe based on a play. Mike Nichols, of course, also had that theatrical background as well, if I remember correctly. Mike Nichols, a great director, an
Yeah.
astonishingly great director. And he was someone who I was always a big fan of. Even his work went all the way back to the 1960s with like The Graduate. I was thinking of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, talk about a play. He directed Working Girl. Charlie Wilson's War was his last film in '07. He of course did the TV miniseries Angels in America. The Birdcage is a endless rewatch for me. I can watch that film all the time. Ironically, I've never seen the original French movie La Cage aux Folles. I've always just watched that version with, of course, Robin Williams. But Closer is a movie. Um, it's got a lot of intrigue, and it's been many years since I've seen it. So please forgive me for not being too hip with it. But the movie stars four of the most attractive people you've ever seen in a film.
Mhm.
Stars Julia Roberts, Jude Law, Natalie Portman, and Clive Owen. And this film is about a two couples or four people that are in relationships, and it's just kind of the interplay within their lives, specifically, um, kind of um, the the romantic relationships and entanglements they get into with each other, if I remember correctly. Specifically, I want to say specifically. Oh boy, this is when I'm getting to specifics that I don't know. I want to say the Jude Law and Natalie Portman character. Um, I have to check up on that. But either way, the film takes place over several years, and it is typically the Jude Law and the Natalie Portman character have this on again, off again relationship of falling madly in love and then heartbreakingly falling out of love. And then the movie is kind of about love and heartbreak, and then a lot of that heartbreak is due to infidelity and people cheating on one another, which happens in relationships all of the time. So the film is connected to, I think, La Piscine in that regard. This idea of playing with those things. This film is definitely more overt in that, whereas La Piscine was more kind of towing the line, playing around, being subtle, being ambiguous. This film is more direct in no, love and relationships and heartbreak will ruin you as a person. You'll have to pick up the pieces and move on, or it could be permanently self-destructive. You know what I mean? And I love how, the film feels like a play of with heavy dialogue and the emotional scenes between two characters where you can envision this on the stage. It's been a minute since I've seen this movie. This Blu-ray is old enough to come out in 2007, I believe. This could use a nice re-release of some kind.
Yeah.
Considering it's 20 years, it's Columbia Pictures put this out, so Sony put this out. Sony loves remastering their movies for various reasons and putting them out in new editions. They're doing that now with they have like a made on demand program. So I don't know if that would be something that they would do with this. They just did it with like I think Beverly Hills Ninja. I mean, if they could put that
Of
out,
all
we might as well
films,
put out
yeah.
Closer.
Dude, I'm getting that one right away.
Yeah, I mean, and they're also putting out a 4K of Lady from Shanghai. That movie's now getting released, I think, for the fourth or fifth time in high def. So
And
you
I'll
never
buy
know.
it again and
Yeah, I
again and
know,
again. Huh.
and again, over and over. But I would buy a new edition of Closer.
Yeah, same. I don't even know if I got that edition. I saw it on stage on Broadway back in 2000. It was Natasha Richardson in the Julia Roberts role, and Kieran Hines, I want to say. But it's a very interesting play, and the film is very faithful to it. It's almost word for word. That was back in the era where Mike Nichols was adapting plays, Angels in America as well, and basically not touching a word of the script. And it's an interesting story in that a lot of it involves like internet chat rooms when that was still kind of new.
Yeah.
And they would do that live on stage with screens, and you would see them chatting and lying about who they were. And yeah, I remember really liking that movie. It was very big at the time, or it was high profile because it was kind of Clive Owen had been around, but this was sort of the announcement of Clive Owen. He was nominated for an Oscar for it, I believe, as was Portman, and it was much talked about. And then I think you're right, no one talks about it or thinks about it anymore in the Nichols canon, at least. It's just kind of there, which is weird considering it's for big stars.
Yeah, huge stars in it, and this was, like you said, around that mid 2000s time where you did see a lot of adaptations of plays and things like that. Also, I've always thought that plays translated very well to film because they're so dialogue heavy, because they can be so stagey, and movies can be that. Although movies are a visual medium, so having some stagnation in them may not be what everyone likes. But I think the performances can override that. The dialogue can
Yeah.
override that. The drama derived from the performances can override that. Essentially, I believe that early cinema was basically kind of that idea of taking the stage play or even the vaudeville stages and putting that onto a camera and putting that onto screen. That's kind of the early version of cinema. That's why a lot of early cinema is rather stagnant, unless you had the Chaplins of the world and the Buster Keatons of the world with those types of films, and of course Lloyd as well. And but a lot of the early stuff was kind of very stagnant because it's just like play to screen at it like straight up. You know what I mean? Like we don't know the visual medium yet. We're just still trying to figure it out. But yeah, Closer is interesting because, like I said, it is from '04, which is a while ago now. And you're right. Yeah, Clive Owen was still coming into his own. Jude Law, I think by that point, was at least recognizable just from his aesthetic as alone.
I
Julia
think that
Roberts had been a big
2004,
star.
right? This
Yes.
was the year that Jude Law was in 6 movies in a single fall. And I think Chris Rock joked at the Oscars, who's Jude Law? Why is he in every movie? And then Sean Penn got up humorlessly and said, actually, Jude Law is a very fine actor. And how dare you, Chris Rock, for making jokes about him? Yeah, that Jude Law had been around, but this was the same fall he did Alfie and Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, and 3 other things that I can't even remember. That was The Aviator too. He pops up in there. Yeah, he was everywhere that fall.
Yeah, he's Errol Flynn in The Aviator.
Yeah.
And he was in I Heart Huckabees. He was in Cold Mountain.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the year before he was in Cold Mountain. But yeah, I remember when Sky Captain: The Year of Tomorrow came out, The World of Tomorrow came out. That was supposed to be a big hit action movie. At least they were selling it, and then kind of flopped. No one talks about it. Talk about a movie no one talks about
Big
now.
time. We actually covered that movie and novelization on Authorized, and I was sort of aghast because I remember going to Sky Captain on opening day and loving it. Just thinking, yes, cinema is back. Oh, the spectacle of this whole thing was shot against green screens and you can't even tell. It looks glorious. Oh, they go to Radio City Music Hall. There's giant robots flying in the skies. This is great. Haven't seen it since. Saw it again and I was so bored. But it
Talk about
certainly,
reappraisals.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's certainly unique. I do wonder if Closer hasn't retained its status as like a memorable film because it is pretty like nasty. Like
Yeah.
it's a bad date movie. You didn't want to go on a date to that movie because it like you said, it's love triangle-esque. I don't even know what shape it is because there's a lot of crisscrossing with lovers and such. And it's and they're mean about it too. That I remember the
Yeah.
line
There's
that
biting sequences in
yeah
there of like breakups that will like rip your heart out if you're like a hopeless romantic like myself. You
yeah
know what I
the
mean?
one line I still remember is he tastes like you but sweeter. It's like
Oh,
whoa,
brutal.
yeah. Oh,
It's kind of like, when Marriage Story came out a few years ago and like married couples would go to it or people in relationships would go to it. And it's like that whole movie's about, you know, the dissolution of a marriage, of a relationship, really. Just just a really harsh, if anything, oftentimes unfortunate real look at the dissolution of relationships. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Sometimes things can be incredibly messy, and anger and emotion just overtakes you. And yeah, it can be tough. It can be really, really tough. But Steven, how are you gonna follow up
Hmm.
close to the most beautiful cast you've ever seen?
Mm. I would say my cast is pretty good looking. Yeah, I don't know. You guys can decide.
Mhm.
But the film that I'm choosing, I decided to kind of pull with the thread of kind of psycho ripoff movie. I figured I'd go down that road as a pairing, and so I took a film out of Volume 1 of this
Oh,
Hammer set here, and I chose that one right there,
fanatic.
Fanatic. It's the image you see right here on the front of Volume 1 of Hammer. Let's pull it out. Fanatic. And so let's
Tallulah
talk about the.
Bankhead. Wow.
Yeah, it's a good one. I really like this. I was surprised. I went back and I had watched this movie like 4 years ago and I gave it 4 stars. That's how much I liked it. I liked it a lot. And I watched it again and I was like, I really still really like this movie. So you have I think her name, yeah, Stephanie Powers plays Patricia, who is now she's fiance. She's about to get married to this guy, and what you find out in their opening conversation is that she was engaged to this other man who had died in a car accident, but she was still felt like connection to the family, like and the mother of her previous the man she was with wants to see her to talk about her son, and so she feels this obligation to do it, to go before she can move on with her life. She needs to go and put this to rest, and so she goes to visit her ex's mother, played by Tallulah Bankhead, and wow. So this is where it's kind of almost a role reversal when it comes to the psycho element to this. In Psycho, you have a man who's obsessed with his mother, and that relationship's weird. In this case, the son is passed, and the mother has got a weird relationship with her passed away son, and how to deal with that. And so she brings in this X as revenge, her sense of a revenge on her. She takes her captive. She comes to visit, takes her captive, and along with her and like housemaid and this like groundskeeper guy, they all kind of keep her captive in this house. And it gets weirder and crazier, and yeah, really cool movie. Really love it. It's got great atmosphere. It's got great performances. Donald Sutherland. This is like a really early role for him, where he plays mom, Tallulah Bankhead's son, who's like, I guess you could say he's mentally handicapped, and so he's kind of in and out of the movie. Stephanie Powers is really great. I think she gives a great, performance here. It's just a really fun kind of, once again, like I said, kind of twisting of the Psycho story. Yeah, and it's is a Hammer film, so this was kind of new for Hammer at the time. Hammer was known for that kind of classic stuff that they were doing, and this was a thriller that was kind of changing the mold for them. So yeah, didn't sound like you had seen this one, Johnny, or had.
I don't think so. I think I know the trailer.
Yeah.
It's I might have it in like some trailer compilation. I and I know I'm wrong for this, but yeah, I have never like fallen in love with the Hammer studio. Now there are exceptions to this. There are some films that I really like from Hammer, and I admittedly the most of what I've seen from them are their monster movies, and
Sure.
I'm such a Universal monster nut that like it's always going to like fall short for me in that department. I'm always going to compare, but I've actually grown to love a lot of them more in recent years. Like I've been watching a bunch of Dracula movies lately, so I have to dip into some of the Christopher Lee, and then Indicator put out that Hammer Robin Hood set last year, which I was like, ooh, I do kind of want to see like Hammer's take on Robin Hood. So this sounds very interesting to me because it's dealing with less iconography than Hammer, than a lot of the Hammer films I've seen. This is just, a generic slasher. Maybe it's still a Psycho ripoff, and that's why it was made in the first place. But it all sounds appealing. Tallulah Bankhead and a young Donald Sutherland, that definitely piques my interest. So yeah, I will for sure check it out.
Yeah, it's one of them films that's also kind of contained in one place. I like movies that, like you said, like like you were talking about Closer, like it like almost could be a play, but I think it's a little directed a little bit more stylishly than movies that are usually based on plays. But yeah, I mean it's a solid movie. You talk about other Hammer movies. I would say me and Andrew talked about this one before. I think it's called "Don't Take Candy from or Stranger." Don't take sweets from strangers. That's a really good one.
That's on my list. I
yeah.
recently watched Cash on Demand, which is a lot of fun. I really like that, and I've heard that Don't Take Candy from Strangers is kind of akin, more in that vein than some of the other like Hammer stuff I've seen. But like when it comes to Hammer, it's like I'm definitely the problem there. It's they've done nothing wrong. I just for some reason I don't connect with them as strongly as I do with some of the American monster stuff or some of the other I'm an Ealing man myself. I don't know, maybe that's it. But is that from the Indicator box set? That's
volume
probably
2
out of print.
Yeah, volume 2. This Fanatic is from volume 1. That Takes Sweets from Strangers in volume 2.
I think Cash on Demand is volume 2 as well.
Yeah.
I'm internally jealous that you have volume 1. Talk about something that I missed out on. By the time I got on the Indicator train, volume 1 I think had long been sold out because I think that has all like the heavy, not the heavy hits from Hammer, but some of the more well known like Hammer horror
Maniac, the Gorgon, the Curse of the Mummy, Curse of the Mummy Tomb.
Yeah. I will say the alternate title or the title that's on IMDb for that movie is Die Die My Darling, all with exclamation points, which probably looks great on a poster.
Yes.
With
no context whatsoever.
I mean, I both titles I mean, I guess Fanatic makes more sense because the mother's kind of got a religious angle to her as well. She's very obsessed with traditional. There's probably some elements of the story that are very talking about traditionalism and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's just a really like entertaining watch, and I was glad to watch it. I got a chance to watch it again before this because I was like, I forgot how much I liked it. I was like, yeah, it's a solid movie. So
yeah, I'm having envy because I always justified missing out on the Hammer sets from Indicator, thinking like, yeah, but I don't even love Hammer that much, so I don't need them. I don't need to pay exorbitant fees on eBay for them. And now I'm thinking, or do I?
Well,
nor do I. Yeah.
Yeah, they're out there.
As we know, everybody's got their different viewpoints. I mean, like for instance, people I know ranked Dementia 13 higher than this film. They thought Dementia 13 was a 3.5 to 4-star movie, and I see people them same people watched this movie and gave it 2 stars, and I'm like,
people are crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. So
yeah, it's interesting. Like Hammer has such a long history that I just started getting into over the last few years because of the Hammer sets. Like I always associated Hammer with Hammer horror, but apparently Hammer horror is just like a part of the Hammer banner.
that
You
was
know
the
what I mean?
beginnings. That was the beginnings.
And it's like, Hammer kind of is more than just horror. Because I always wanted to get. I'm still in the process of getting all of the Christopher Lee Draculas and then the Peter Cushing Frankenstein films. The rights to those, specifically here, are all over the place.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a pain. Even in the UK, it's kind of a pain to track all those down if you want to.
Yeah.
If you want to.
And a lot of them have different, like the same movie will have multiple titles, like you said,
Yes.
Stephen. And so sometimes you run the risk of like, ooh, I don't have this one. And it's like, no, yes, you do. You just have it from a different studio and a different title. But so, yeah, it can be tricky.
Yes, most definitely. But yeah, I have fun doing this part of it, trying to figure out what thread of the film that I just watched, figuring out the angle of how I want to do a double feature. And I thought, picking 2 kind of psycho kind of ripoffs would be fun double feature. So, yeah.
I think we all did an excellent job with thematically linking our choices today. I think they are all good double features.
Most definitely. I got to get these. I mean, like, part of me wants to like make like a post or put something somewhere where we got all the double features that we've done on all these shows and put them out there for people so they don't have to watch the shows to do it. But then I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I know. You're going to take away the views, take away the listens,
take
away all that stuff.
But I want people to get these good double features so they can just be like, they have it. So then they can do it. And so they're not having to watch an hour and a half long show to figure it out. I don't know. We'll talk about it, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
But Johnny,
yeah,
thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me. I had a blast. I knew I would. This was a delight, and would love to come back on any of your incarnations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know Andrew's over there all by himself on Chasing Labels, so you could join him there. Of course, you're more than welcome to come back here, especially since you told me you got a pile that you need to get rid of. So
I always have a pile, and it just keeps getting bigger. I have been recently living in a New York City apartment. I have been making some tough choices and thinking some of these I don't need to display on the shelf. So I've been pulling some of those and like, do I even need to own this period? And so I've been boxing things up, and that's why I have been even more motivated than usual to watch some of these things that I own that I have never seen. And usually the Kino and Criterion shelves are full of those.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Well, tell everybody where they could find your podcast and where they can reach out to you.
Sure. You can follow me on Letterboxd under my name, Johnny Pomatto, and you can listen to Authorized, the film novelization podcast, anywhere where you can catch podcasts. We are in the middle of Planet of the Apes now. I'm not on every episode of that. Every once, we have some floating guest hosts and such, and sometimes they're nice to me and say, Johnny, you don't have to watch or read the Rebel Moon novelizations. Like, oh, thank you. So you can find me there and find me at the movies in New York. Film Forum is doing a 1980s series right now, and the Paris Theater is still doing Hitman movies. Oh, I do highly recommend the Richard Linklater film that's about to come out. And you can find me on all the socials, Letterboxd and Facebook and whatnot. But check out Authorized.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, of course. Next week, Andrew will be back on Chasing Labels next Monday live on this channel. So watch out for that. We'll be doing, I might have some reviews coming out soon for some Blu-ray release from Imprint, and maybe some more updates on, the new show, Moving Mutations. Maybe we'll have some more updates on that soon. But until then, of course, follow us on all the socials. I run the Instagram, the Twitter. We also have the group on Facebook. Please join us over there. But with that said, thanks for everybody for watching and listening to this episode of the Unwatched Pile. And what are you doing? Just get out of here. Go watch your damn movies. Bye.